Hi everyone, Jay Egersdorff here, previewing game week 18 of the Fantasy Premier League. We're there now, it's Christmas, and we've got 4 game weeks in the next 13 days basically, so this is a real exciting part of the season. So usual format for this video, I'm going to quickly cover off how I did in game week 17. I'm going to move on to chat about game week 18, and I'm probably going to condense some of the wider issues that are going to affect us in game weeks 19, 20 and 21 as well, because I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to do videos during the Christmas period. Just I'm sure, like you guys, going to be busy doing family stuff and all sorts of Christmas related things. We're going to talk about left field options, the FPL doughnut, and then I'll talk about captain options over Christmas. So last time round, 54 points for me. I carried the free transfer. Got a little bit lucky maybe. I got Harry Kane as captain and he got an assist in the dying minutes. Snodgrass and Sané both with double-digit returns, so that was pretty good. As you know, those who watch me regularly, I always aim for 50 if I can. I think that represents an okay game week. So 54, not great, but not bad, and it's hit the target, so it's done its job. And we move on to these intense Christmas fixtures that are coming up. So a whole bunch of different things that I want to chat about. There's a whole lot of change that's happened. Funnily, in the last video when I was writing the content for it, I didn't really seem to be that much going on or that many talking points. But since then we've had, of course, the big one, the Mourinho situation at Man United. I want to chat a bit about West Ham. Chat about Spurs, chat about Man City and the experience I'm having there as an owner of both Sané and of Sterling. Chat about Chelsea, Arsenal, and chat a bit more about Southampton. I touched upon them a couple of videos ago, and I'm going to revisit that. And I'm also going to have a quick word about Burnley as well. So let's get stuck in. There's quite a lot to cover off there. So biggest talking point is the change at Man United. So out goes Mourinho, in comes Solskjaer. What's going to happen there? Who knows? Bit of a nostalgic appointment, if you ask me. Questionable track record, maybe. He did well 10 years ago, I know, with the academy and the reserves at Old Trafford, and his record in Scandinavia and Norwegian football is good. Of course, he had the ill-fated time at Cardiff, but at the same time, I think that was when they did have a lot of challenges off the pitch, for example changing the colour of the home kit, which I've never heard of before or since. So I'm sort of looking at people like Pogba, Lingard, Lukaku, but Pogba in particular, I think irrespective of who the manager is, I think he had such a beef with Mourinho, which was a mutual thing. Mourinho didn't seem to like him and he didn't like Jose. It's really down to this player now to demonstrate that he is at that world-class level. So I would expect Solskjaer, or whether Solskjaer hangs around for the rest of the season or a couple of weeks, who knows. But I would expect Pogba to be back in the core of that team now, and the emphasis really be on him to perform. So with that in mind, United's fixtures are pretty good. They've got a couple of good home games coming up. I think they play Bournemouth and have they got Huddersfield? I can't remember. But they've got a couple of good home games coming up. So it's a definite on the watch list. I mean, it's funny how football chucks up these fixtures. The first game is back to Solskjaer's old club, Cardiff, which I don't think will be an easy game. I think that's a tough game down there. They'll be well up for it, the Cardiff fans. But you'd expect United to come through. So I do feel it's a little bit for me of wait and see, just to double check the system and double check who plays, and of course double check that Solskjaer gets off to a good start, because this is a team that isn't playing well and Solskjaer isn't a magician. So it would be great, wouldn't it, if he turned it round and United came out flying from a fantasy football point of view. But for me, it's a little bit of wait and see, and let's see where the next few game weeks takes us. I think there's more nailed on in-form options available right now, which does bring me around quite nicely to West Ham. Keep scoring loads of goals. They're the absolute form team. They've got the fixtures, so therefore their players represent amazing value. Like I said, I picked up Snodgrass a couple of weeks ago for a bargain price, and he's returned about 20 points for me in 2 weeks, which is brilliant. They've kind of done a bit of what Bournemouth did at the start of the season, where they've utilised this favourable run of fixtures, really got some form behind them and started knocking in a few goals. Clean sheets are kind of there. I know they let in a couple of late goals in previous games, but you can kind of see Bournemouth are almost doing what West Ham did at the start. So if you remember West Ham, I think they lost the first 4 games. They had fairly tricky fixtures, and Bournemouth are kind of seem to be doing the reverse of what West Ham are doing, in that they've had this great start and now they're sort of tailing off. I think a real skill area of FPL is trying to spot these teams where the value is. So it's the teams that are on a current great run. It would probably be wrong to say at the start of the season that everybody expected Bournemouth to maintain that great fixture. They were sitting around 6th place, weren't they? Maintain that form and that position for the rest of the season. Likewise, it's probably wrong to say West Ham are going to stay performing as they are. But whilst they're flying and whilst the fixtures are there and the form's there, I think it's time to pile in. And I know I can see there's some people I'm seeing on social media getting 3 West Ham players, which in reality I don't think is a huge disaster. I think Fabianski looks pretty good. He's one of the top scoring goalies and he's only got 2 clean sheets, so that tells you that he's getting a lot of bonus for saves. You've got Chicharito, you've got Anderson, of course, who's doing really well. Snodgrass that I mentioned. So plenty of good options there. So that's West Ham. Moving on, Spurs. So Harry Kane. I've brought in Kane, and we know there's a bit of a curse that goes back a couple of seasons with me and Mr. Kane. Kind of unconvincing for me at the minute, Kane, I think, but at the same time he is being consistent. Came off the bench last night in the Carabao Cup and got an assist with a really nice through ball. So you're kind of watching him and you're kind of hoping that now they've got this cup game out the way, they've got through in the Champions League, you'd hope they really knuckle down and focus on the league now, and Kane gets a bit of rhythm. So it has crossed my mind again in the last week or so to, could it free up money by switching Kane down to maybe Aguero or somebody like that. But I think for now, given the fixtures, if you have Kane, it's probably worth sticking with him. If you don't have him, is it super urgent? You get him, I'm not sure. I think until he starts firing in double-digit points hauls, then 5 or 6 points for the money is not great value. I think I talked about it earlier in the season, Kane and Salah. Salah. And what I was saying there was basically until he's hitting 8 or 9 points a week, I worked out with some of the averages of the other players that you could pick. Until he's hitting 8 or 9 points per week, then actually he's not great value. So time will tell for Kane, but it's an important few game weeks for him for sure. Likewise, let's chat about City. So I'm an owner of both Sterling and Sané, and since I've had both, I think I've had them for maybe 3 or 4 game weeks now, and I'm yet to, in my mind, really feel the benefit of having them both. I'm yet to have them where they've both, for example, scored in the same game week and come out with 8+ points each. I did have a goodish result, I guess, last time round where Sané got 10 and Sterling got 6. But I think for the fact that they're taking up 2 midfield spots and sucking up quite a lot of value, and I need to be a bit more greedier, I think, and I do expect more from them. A big challenge that goes against one of my philosophies of the game is that you shouldn't have players in your team that you're getting excited about that they're actually in the first 11. So what I mean by that is when you log on your phone at 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, you're hoping to see a load of points hauls from your various players, especially the premium priced ones that play for the top teams. You don't want to be doing 2 check your phones. You don't want to do the check your phone at 2:05 and pray that they're in the starting 11 and then check it again at 5 o'clock. And that I'll talk about that a bit more when I come to Arsenal in a second. But the point I'm trying to make is that it is sleepwalking a bit into a problem, because straight away you've got Mahrez that is going to suck up game time, and Pep, who frankly is so unpredictable with his rotation. And usually, whilst rotation is inevitable, there is an element I've found over the years of kind of predictability. You can work out, I mean, let's take Kane, for example, who was rested on last night in the Carabao Cup. He was rested before the Barcelona game, and of course I remember I spoke about that. I could see that one coming. That looked pretty predictable to me. So you'd expect him to play on Saturday. I would be staggered if he doesn't start on Saturday, assuming there's no injury or any problem. Whereas with Guardiola, in those circumstances, he'd turn up on Saturday and something would go against what you expected. The logical trend wouldn't be followed. A great example is in the Hoffenheim game, the Champions League. Both Sterling and Sané started, and if memory serves, did they play the whole game? And it wasn't even a game City. They didn't really need to win. I think a draw would have been enough to get through. So in most cases, with most managers, that would mean they'd probably get rested. So it is a big lottery there with City, and I don't think that's exclusive to Sané and Sterling. I think Kevin De Bruyne is back. That's really exciting from an FPL point of view because he is a brilliant player. But I feel that there is a chance that he'll get rotated and edged back in carefully with these Christmas matches. They've got David Silva to come back. They've just got a wealth of options. Of course, Aguero's going to come back. So it's a bit like a double-edged sword with City. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because they score that many goals. You can't really justify not having them. But then it is so frustrating when you have them and they don't play. So I don't really know what the answer is there for me other than cross your fingers, and experience of playing this game tells me that if your strategy is cross your fingers, that's probably not going to get you very far. So brings me now round really nicely to somebody who I do think is a lot more nailed on, and I've written down here in my notes, must own ? And that's everybody's friend Mr. Hazard down at Chelsea. So I have had him earlier in the season. I know a lot of you have as well, and I took him out around that sticky patch he had where he had injuries and his form fell off a bit. And as Hazard tends to do, I don't know if he's got an ironic surname, because every time I take him out my team, it is a bloody Hazard, because he gets a load of points. So scored again last night in the Carabao Cup. You could kind of write that. I didn't know the score because my phone was in the other room, and it came through on Sky Sports. Chelsea are through. Coming up after the break is the draw, and it's going to be, Chelsea are in the draw. They've won 1-0, and you kind of sat there and went, I know Hazard scored. It's just that's the way he is at the minute. He's really hit that form, and I'd be encouraged by the fact that he has had a rest prior to Christmas. So he has had an injury, so he's had a bit of time out the team. And really, for me, given their fixtures, they've got Leicester, who are on a horrendous run, and they've got some other teams that are not in the top part of the league. So, yeah, Hazard, I've written must own next to him. I do think if you don't have him, you've got to be looking at a way perhaps to try and shoehorn him into your team, because I think there is a chance if there's one player that if you're asking me maybe to pick one player who I think in this next 13 or 14 days over the next 4 game weeks is going to score the most, I think I'd be hard pushed to find somebody higher than him. So speaking of problems, I said I'd talk about Arsenal. So I've done something a bit stupid, which was point out earlier in the season what a pain in the backside Emery is at Arsenal with his rotation. If you remember, I had Mkhitaryan, who disappeared after a few game weeks. And then I've put in Lacazette, and he's kind of done the same. He's got this funny knack of substituting players at half time. He did it last night with Iwobi, who was actually playing quite well. He got brought off quite early. Lacazette has found himself sort of basically playing 45 minutes. Really frustrating. And yes, he's got Burnley at home this Saturday, but I'm really thinking, like I said before, about if your strategy in FPL is cross your fingers, then you may as well forget it. I mean, the sod's law is I'll probably transfer him out and he'll go and get 2 goals. He'll start the game and score. That's just sod's law. But at the same time, do I want to carry the risk of having him in my team and he comes on for 1 point? Or, I mean, he got like an assist on Sunday and he got 4 points. But it's just not enough that these guys aren't playing the whole game. I think if you have Aubameyang, the ironic worry is that he gets rested and Lacazette plays, and Lacazette owners like myself go and sell Lacazette, and the Aubameyang owners get really frustrated, and the previous Lacazette owners who've just sold him get really frustrated. But I just think it's too much of a headache, that Arsenal thing. You need players that you can be very, very confident are going to play, and throughout the Arsenal team, it's just unpredictable, and that's just no good. So for me, I'm just probably going to stay well clear of Arsenal now. I think even later in the season when they get double game weeks, it's just a lottery. So not for me. Okay, a couple more teams to chat about. Really impressed with, and I know I'm going to say this guy's name wrong because I always pronounce names wrong, but Hasenhüttl, Southampton's new manager, came and did something when he first joined that leapt off the page to me. I absolutely loved it. He wrote a really, I don't know if you read his letter that he sent to season ticket holders, really nice, positive letter where he talked about team spirit and togetherness, and the team working exceptionally hard, and the team having a duty to put on, or certainly have a level of effort that was given 100% at all times, because they owed that to the fans. And he bought everybody a beer, which I thought was just a really good gesture, and it was therefore no surprise that Southampton not only beat Arsenal, but in the manner that they won. And this is a Southampton team that hadn't previously scored many goals. They went and scored 3. Obviously, they let in a couple. I think I can't remember the pattern of the match, but did they go behind at one point? And I just think if you look at the spirit that was showed by their previous managers, Hughes, Pellegrino, Puyol, I mean, these were pretty dour characters, and the way Southampton played was really summed up by their persona, whereas this guy's turned up, thrown his weight around a little bit, but in a nice way, bought everybody a beer, really instilled an idea of togetherness, which I think is really important in football. And off they go and get that really good home result. So I've got my attention on Southampton at the minute. I'm interested that Ings has hit the ground running under this new manager, 2 goals on his first start. I like the fact his price is 5.4, and there's basically nothing under that price bracket until you get to Isaac's Success at 4.6 and Camera at 4.3. There's literally nobody in the middle bit that is regularly playing. Caveat for Ings is that it looks like Hasenhüttl plays a system with 1 centre forward, so he's competing with Austin and Gabbiadini, but at the same time he's clearly put his faith in Ings for that first home game. He's scored 2 goals, so at that price it's probably, I think, if you're looking for a new forward, it's probably a risk worth considering. And then finally the last team I want to mention is Burnley. And the reason I want to mention Burnley is I think their fixtures turn a little bit. They've got, I think, 3 out of 4 home games. They've certainly got 2 home games back to back. And it's a bit like the point I made earlier in the season about Huddersfield, which has kind of had mixed results, but has earned people some points. And that is, if you've ever been to Burnley and to Turf Moor, it is not a very pleasant place to go in December. It gets a real wind whipping through it off the moors, and is not very pleasant weather. And when I looked at Burnley and the way that they played against Tottenham last week, that old Burnley style, gritty, hard-working, resilient. So, I think particularly Joe Hart, he's on my radar, 4.5 still, makes plenty of saves. I need to get rid of Matt Ryan because of the Asia Cup. So he's definitely on the radar. I'm wondering whether Burnley are going to resort to type and get themselves out of trouble by shutting up shop and keeping a nice tight defence. So I definitely think they're worth considering if you're looking at potentially a defender, maybe not if you're looking at an attacker. So hopefully that covers quite a few of the points, not just for game week 18, but the next few game weeks. Let's look at, on the back of that, some of the left field options. So I've pulled out 3 names. I've pulled out a real cheap defender. Quite a few people had him at the start, I think, so he was available for about 4 million, and he's dropped a little bit less now. I think he's 3.9, and that's Bednarek, who's at Southampton. Yes, I know I've probably pronounced that wrong. but they've got a couple of decent games, and they've got a couple of tricky ones. But if you just need somebody in your squad to free up some money, he looks like he's getting in the team. I pulled out another West Ham player that was a real go-to player, sort of came out of nowhere about 2-3 seasons ago, and he's got a couple of goals. He looks to be back in the team and back enjoying his football. Mikel Antonio could be an option if you want to perhaps double up on the West Ham midfield, and maybe you can't afford Anderson. He's a little bit cheaper. And then as an attacker, I know I said they're a wait and see, but this guy does have the form at the minute. So again, maybe you're looking at trading out Mitrovic or Wilson maybe, who've hit a bit of a blip. So I think Rashford could be a good option if you're looking for maybe a differential. Okay, a couple more things to go through. The FPL Doughnut and captain options for Game Week 18. So FPL Doughnut, there wasn't really any standout contenders this week. So I've given it to a player who has really done well for me this season, but he actually, by coming off the bench and only getting a 1-pointer, he cost me 6 points. I know a lot of people probably had Wan-Bissaka on the bench. I had Ryan Bennett as well, and Bennett didn't come on. So I'm really sorry. I had to pick somebody. I'm really sorry, Callum Wilson, but you are the FPL Doughnut. And then finally, captain options. So a whole bunch of different options here. I think on the basis that they didn't play, they only played about half an hour between them on Tuesday in the cup. I think you've got to look at Sterling and Sané. Man City have won the last couple of games against Palace. I believe they've won them both 5-0. So that's pretty enticing for City. Hazard, of course, I think looks like a pretty solid option. And then you've got the usual suspects floating around, Aubameyang and Salah. But of course, Aubameyang, be careful because of our friend Mr. Emery. Maybe a bit of a tip if you're looking at a captain over Christmas. Try and it's not a problem if you want to pick somebody who maybe a bit worried might get rotated. As long as your backup captain is someone you're pretty confident is going to play, because the last thing you want to do is end up with no captain at all. That is a real nightmare. So hope that's been enjoyable. Thank you as ever for you guys for watching. Thanks for all your support this season. Shout out to my guys on Patreon. Hope you're enjoying that. There's something new coming out as well. I'm going to be writing for, I'll put a link up down here. It's something called 90 Minutes at a Time. It's a publication that's coming out in collaboration with some really experienced veterans, if you like, in the FPL community. So I'm pretty excited about that if you want to go check that out too. And I guess finally from me, go and have a really good Christmas. Drink lots, eat lots, see your family and friends. And if I don't see you before, I'll see you back in early part of 2019. Cheers, everybody.